Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2024 World Chess Championship match between the incumbent, the champion, Ding Liren, and the challenger, Gukesh. This is the second round recap. It's currently 1-0 Ding Liren. Yesterday in the first game of the match, Ding struck with the black pieces. That is the third time he has defeated Gukesh in a classical chess game, something that Gukesh has yet to do against Ding. And on top of being 3-0 against him in classical chess, Ding has won every game with the black pieces. So the big question was, in round number 2, would Ding try to put the foot on the neck, as they say, put the pressure on, take some risks, go for a 2-0 lead? Would Gukesh try to strike back as fast as possible? Or is it a very long match, and all of that is hyperbole and overstated? I'm about to show you what happened in the second game. Big shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. And for the first time ever, I'm uploading every single one of these recaps also to my official Facebook page. So shout out to everybody watching on Facebook. Not something that I've done. There is a GothamChess Facebook page, a little bit smaller. We're trying to grow it, but shout out to everybody on there. And I've been talking about it for a while now. The GothamChess chessboard is available at Walmart and pretty soon at Amazon. And Chess League 2.0 drops on December 13th. And with that, let's get into the games. Yesterday, I predicted in my recap along with Magnus Carlsen. In case you don't know, I'm also making recaps with Magnus. That's for the app that his team is working on, the Take app. That's all on YouTube. I actually predicted that Ding would play e4. So I'm 2 for 2 so far. It's pretty good. I said that Ding would play e4. And, as far as Gukesh goes, if the World Championship was 7-6, and this is a best of 4 teams, so they play 14 games, right? So if it's 7-6 going into the final game, Gukesh will play the Sicilian. But if you get e4 on the board, and you lost the World Championship game 1 in basically the worst possible fashion, with the white pieces in a relatively poor performance, you want to stabilize and you want to play e5. In fact, in many ways, I just played a match myself in Sweden against Pia Kramling, and in the first round, I lost with the white pieces. It was a disastrous start, and I was very happy to draw the next game in a relatively stable fashion. So Gukesh is not going to win the match today, but he very well could lose the match today. That's what Magnus said. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, and bishop c5. So Ding choosing the Italian, Ding choosing not the Spanish, not the Ponziani, to my dismay, not the Scotch, but the Italian. Perfectly reasonable, and Gukesh doesn't play the 2 knights. He plays bishop c5. Now white generally in the top players ranks plays c3 and d3. At the amateur level, c3 followed by d4 is pretty good. The computer just gives an instant equality because, if black knows 10 to 15 moves, black is sort of able to kill the game very quickly. It's early here in New York. These games start at 4 a.m. New York time. So making the recap right when I wake up is a little bit hard. Like my morning, I was going to say morning breath, but I brush my teeth. My morning, get your morning voice is still nice and strong. Knight f6, and now this is already a big surprise. Like I said, players at the top level here play c3. Then they try to play b4, a4. After they play c3 and let's say black castles, black decides where this pawn goes. White generally maneuvers the knight to g3. Sometimes white goes here. Every now and then white plays this very aggressive Italian with bishop g5 and tries to get black to play g5. But Ding plays knight c3. Now, if you check the database, knight c3 is not up there. I mean, it's like a 10%er of a move. It's not a bad move, but now white no longer is able to build with the pawns. And basically, this knight is going to have to go somewhere. Another thing is, there are some lines where you can chase this bishop. That's a secret idea. That is why Gukesh here plays a6. First of all, he wants to play b5. Second of all, he wants to stop white's pawn advance. And third of all, after knight a4, he can now simply play bishop to a7. Ding plays a4 himself. So now there is no b5 for black. And now Gukesh plays d6, which again, very reasonable move, trying to develop yet another piece. You will also notice Gukesh is delaying castling. I mean, there are some little nuances here and there, And again, here he delays castling. I think he delays castling because there are some like ways that white could try to exploit the fact that black never played the move h6. For instance, bishop g5, knight d5 is a very common way that beginners play. And if you're not careful, you know, a beginner gets this on you. Put pressure on the pin piece. PP on the PP for everybody watching this who is, you know, under 12 years old or finds PP on the PP hilarious, which I don't think that really ever gets old, to be honest. Like, I'm almost 30 and that's still funny to me. I'm like, ha, PP twice. So put pressure on the pin piece, open up the king. Yeah, that's why Gukesh plays h6. And you can tell here from the time spent, Gukesh is maybe a little bit caught off guard, but nothing crazy. And Ding plays bishop e3. So the idea of this is very straightforward. You want to go here and open up the rook. And if black castles and gives this to you, at the very least, you know, you can always play knight h4. Black here has this move knight g4, but my point is, if white gets this knight to f5, white just has a fantastic position. White will use the f-file completely with 19 points of material. And in chess, we always have to ask ourselves, does a trade benefit us, yay or nay? Okay, now Gukesh plays bishop to e6 relatively quickly, and in this position, Ding plays a novelty. So in every one of these games, there is going to be a moment that is a novelty, and I'm going to tell you about it because in chess, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of like when you find out that like the stars are going to align a certain way. You know, like sometimes on the news, they're like, hey, today the sun is in blah, blah, blah formation, and it's going to be shiny, so you should look at the sky at like 6 p.m., and you're like, all right, I don't understand anything, but I'm a human that's entertained by stuff, so I'll do that. Yeah, in chess, we kind of do that. You know, it's like the shiny object. Oh, you have the new iPhone 17 Pro Max Giga, blah, 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 blah. Like the same in chess. So a novelty is a move that has never been played before. A novelty can be terrible, or it can be interesting. And in this particular case, given Ding spent like 20 seconds on it, it means he's prepared it. There have been games here before. Nodirbek Abdusaturov from Uzbekistan took on c5 against Fabiano Caruana and then played knight d2. And then he went here and here and knight e3 and had a very pleasant position. I think he actually went on to win the game, but it was a blitz game. Ding plays a5. And what's fascinating about a5 for a second game in a row is that if you let the engine run on like a human engine, like not a cloud computer, which is really powerful, the engine thinks that a5 is a really bad move. It's just like, what? It's minus 0.25. What are you doing? I just go here and I play bishop b4 trying to damage the pawn, and I can win the pawn on a5. And then knight d5, and now there's two pawns hanging, but apparently white is completely okay. As you can see, there's a line, knight takes e4, queen to d3, attacking the knight. If the knight goes back to f6, you play queen b3 and you devastate the position. So the knight probably has to go to c5, simultaneously attacking the queen and protecting the b3 square. And after queen f5, knight to e6, queen to g4, black can't castle because of bishop takes h6 ideas. So white has some nagging pressure. Even though black can technically win two pawns, after knight h4, knight f5, white is doing very well. That's the idea of a5. So the idea of a5 is that if black enters the territory here with bishop c4, bishop b4, black might be in some danger after like 6 to 7 moves. So Gukesh does take on c4. He's not dumb. He understands it's the best move. But here's a benefit. Sorry, not a benefit. Here's another thing. He could also go here. And structurally, this looks insane. Doubled isolated e-pawns. They're doubled, and all the neighbors have been also removed. So, like, how is this good? Well, it's good because it's actually very hard for black to move now. Black has really big struggles here. White can, slowly improve the position, knight d5 ideas, and just be very pleasant. But castles is what Gukesh chooses. He takes here, he castles his king, and he basically leaves himself open to bishop takes c5 and d takes c5. And Ding plays this very quickly, and this move b3. 12 moves played by Ding relatively instantly. And again, there's a moment here he could have maybe moved this queen, but if he did that, black very quickly jumps to d4. So instead, Ding plays b3. He's going to meet a queen trade with a rook capture on d1. Gukesh is like, I'm going to take. I mean, I think I'm in Ding's preparation, but like, we both have double c-pawns. There's no D pawns. There's an E pawn, and I have one too. You know, we both have one. So Gukesh evaluates this position as holdable. Okay. Not to mention, this could be a weakness. Now, if you actually brought this pawn back to A3, might be a pretty different story, because the knight can't go to B4. But yeah, he just puts the rook on D8. And, you know, when I woke up, I saw this position, and I was like, well, this game is either going to end in like 10, 15 moves. Now, there's a rule in the World Championship. The players cannot agree to a draw on the 40th move. That may surprise some of you watching. What does that even mean? Well, what it means is you can't offer a draw, and your opponent can't accept it. But you can make a draw by repetition. You can shuffle the pieces back and forth 3 times. You can get 3-time repetition. It happens sometimes. But yeah, I thought the game would like end by repetition or take 7 hours. And here, Ding really surprised me. So this is the first moment out of preparation. And there is a move here for Ding, which is knight to E1. And knight E1 is, you know, just trying to go here. And if black plays knight D4, you play F3, king F2, rook D2, rook D1, knight D3, you make these quick improvements. But black can go here, and take the pawn on A5, but white gets knight D3 and gets one of these pawns. Actually, this is the best chance that white has. I mean, white doesn't have many chances. It's a relatively boring game. But what really shocked me is that on this move, Ding has played 13 moves of preparation. He goes here. Ding spends 10 minutes on the first move that's not prep and moves the rook off an open file into the biggest traffic jam I've ever seen. I mean, this is Los Angeles. Well, I was going to say Los Angeles past like rush hour, but it's Los Angeles basically all the time. And, you know, I don't really get it, to be honest. Like, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, 91 to me makes sense. I mean, even king F1, like, I guess, again, Ding did not want to, like, lose this pawn, but he's not really ever going to lose the pawn. Maybe he saw this position and was like, well, here I would have to play rook A1, so I might as well play rook C1. He plays rook C1. Gukesh plays knight D4, because if knight takes E5, black plays rook E8 and immediately wins the pawn back. So knight E1, Gukesh plays rook D6, Ding plays king F1, he brings his king to the middle. He's probably going to play F3. Okay, now he puts his rook back on D1, rook D8, and F3. And Gukesh plays king G7. Gukesh has just made very simple and straightforward improving moves. He hasn't really touched his pawns. And now we have king F2. And Gukesh plays H5. Now, if you'd like to play ambitiously here with white, you play H4. Because that locks the structure a little bit, and you kind of take away that side of the board, and now, you know, it's time to start figuring out what we're doing over here. Like, knight C6 might happen, then you play knight D5. Not playing H4 is a very interesting proposition. Instead, Ding plays knight E2, and he offers a trade of knights, and he also kind of, like, sort of threatens that he will play C3 in the future. For example, king G8, you know, there is like knight C1, king G7, C3. Like, this is something defending this pawn, and the knight will get out, and then you can... But, yeah, knight E2 is played, and Gukesh plays knight out of the position to C6. Ding goes knight C3, and they repeat moves 3 times, and they make a draw. You know, I gotta tell you, pretty uneventful. Now, I'm gonna summarize why this happened. Number one, I think Ding just got here and made a decision like, probably I'm not gonna win this game. Even if I take 4 hours to try, might as well get some rest. I got a little bit of information, you know, I got a glimpse at what Gukesh is thinking with, you know, in terms of the Italian. I see he's going to be playing E4, E5. I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I'm still up a game in the match, and Gukesh didn't really have a good response from my French defense yesterday, so I'm happy. For Gukesh, it's like, I'm on the board. I shook off a loss. I got a pretty decent game under my belt. It kind of makes sense. It's kind of like my match against Pia, actually. Now, Gukesh also knows Ding is considering e4. I think the next time Ding plays white, he's not going to play e4 again. I think he might play d4 or c4, because it's going to be extremely hard to break like this. However, if Ding is up in the match, he might just be content drawing with white. He might actually just straight up feel better playing with black, especially if he gets another win in game 3. I'm not predicting a win in game 3 with black. That would be unfathomable. For their next game, with Gukesh playing the white pieces, I think Gukesh will go back to e4. I don't think he's going to be that shocked by the French that he completely stops playing e4. It sort of makes sense he would repeat it. He is an e4 player, and I would imagine that if you start the World Championship with e4, it means you've prepared it more than anything else. Yeah, but if Ding plays 2 Frenches, that would be absolutely wild. But for a second game, stuff like this happens. I understand it's a little bit boring. And, I will say, if Ding really... if Ding was rated instead of 27-28, like 27-88, and had not had a rough year, I almost feel like he would play on. You don't have to burn your bridges here, but this is also sort of a very risk-free move. And listen, I'm going to talk to Magnus Carlsen himself later, so I'm very curious to hear what he'll have to say on the matter. A bunch of people now are making recaps, so, like, not playing on with h4 is a curious decision, because it freezes the structure. And I'm not saying white by any stretch of the imagination is going to win the game anytime soon, but, like, you're playing a totally risk-free game. You might as well play. I mean, Gukesh is the one that's going to have questions to answer. But fine, a draw. It's 1.5 to half after 2 games. We've got up to 9 games, to play, and probably more like 13 or 14. It is a best-of-14 match. Relatively short recap. Shout out to all of you who are tuning in to every single one of these. First one on YouTube had like 600,000 views almost, so incredible stuff. Gotham Chessboard at Walmart and Amazon soon to come. Chessly 2.0 on the way. I'll be talking about it a lot because I'm very excited. The relaunch of my educational platform. I cannot wait to share it with all of you. It's going to be so awesome. Okay? And also, shout out to everybody who tuned in on Facebook. That's all. Short game. See you for game number 3. Get out of here.